Welcome, Paritosh, to Caizin Commune podcast, episode 2, Who Has a Clue, where we talk to people who indeed do have a clue. Today, we are talking about a favorite topic, my favorite topic, on retrospectives, and especially talking about honest retrospectives, which is also, I feel, a large problem. Just throughout anybody who's doing Agile, I've seen that they either do retrospectives or don't do retrospectives. There is nothing called as a good retrospective. Before we directly jump into the topic, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So I am a Scrum Master and have worked close to a decade with various Scrum teams, practicing primarily Agile, Kanban, and Scrum, Kanban, Scaled Agile, situated in various geographies. I am currently working with a product team of 19 members, and we try to diligently follow Scrum.
Wow, that's nice.
I believe Agile is all about flexibility and being ready to embrace the change. Retrospective is one such tool which helps you achieve that. You can look at your past and improve your future with this. So it's a very powerful thing, which definitely we should develop.
Perfect, yeah. True. So, yeah, talking about team sizes, right? So, I have spent time with a max team size of about 24, which was also not really entirely resident. But we did Scrum of Scrum and less also, borrowed some concepts from less towards the tapering end of the project as well. And within that size of the team as well, we had a few people who were resident within the team, and some people were moving in and out as well. So that kind of kept the team a little bit fluid. The people who stayed resident also had the domain knowledge of the product. They also had the technical skills which were essential for the success of the product. The people who were fluid, moving in and out of the team, they were really, you could say some cross-functional skills which we could get very specific to the requirement of the product. The deal with retrospectives was, like you said, inspect and adopt, right? To take away a lot of that deal, because people get distracted and a lot of time is spent on sprint planning, daily stand-ups, demos. But amongst all these Scrum events, retrospective is the most neglected one. So I definitely wanted to talk about this a lot more with you.
Sure. I mean, I totally agree with you, Amya. People do neglect and give least importance to this activity because they don't understand the importance. Individuals need to understand how retrospectives can help one, achieve getting better and getting things sorted. And I'll quote Steve Jobs here. He said that when you develop something, when you innovate something, you tend to make mistakes. And the quickly you recognize your mistakes and you act upon those, your innovations will become better. So this goes the same way. We can apply this in retrospective as well. Even the best product teams today are not immune to mistakes. They do make mistakes. There are a lot of oversights, disorganization, misunderstandings, all of those things, and which leads to development failure. The thing is, it is okay to make mistakes, but what is more important is that you act on those, you learn from those, and you adapt to that. So because if you keep on making mistakes without learning anything and incorporating it, ultimately your customers will suffer.
True. So, in my case as well, right now I'm working with a team size which is fairly small. So within 6 people team, we pretty much know each other so well that we know when they are waking up, when they go to the bed, what are their daily habits, so to say, what food they like, what movies they like, who's their favorite movie star. Everything apart from work also is so well known that what has happened in my team now is specifically that we do not have retrospective as a separate event. And so it's in quite a contrast, right? You're working with 19 people, I'm working with 6 people. Our retrospective is almost like an integral part of our entire process. We talk about tickets in our daily stand-ups. Our daily stand-ups are relatively longer. We do updates to the start of the stand-up and then actually dive collectively as a team to see if there are no impediments, making sure what we did yesterday was at the acceptable quality, so on and so forth. But yeah, let's take a moment. Actually, I just want to give quick credits to a few people, a few stalwarts of the industry whom we are probably referring to a lot of their content as well. Involuntarily, I have read a lot of their articles and their books as well, so I would be making references to them. So definitely a big shout out to Esther Derby and Diana. I don't know where they are today, but they wrote this book called Agile Retrospectives, Making Good Teams Great. And this was released in 2006. I read it somewhere around 2010. And I take home a lot from that book because it actually tackles aspects of people issues, the cultural issues wherein people don't really open up because of their personal traits or just because on the culture that they were brought up in, the geography that they belong to. So tackling people issues along with technical or technology issues, both are to be covered in a retrospective. And how to do that with least possible friction, the book is great reference to that. Then, of course, Jonathan Smart, who is a creator of Better Value, Sooner, Safer, Happier. It was used as a prioritization framework. That's what how it was perceived in the beginning. But later on, of course, people could develop more from it and made a retrospective model also out of it. So you have value in the center. You have better, which is quality. You have sooner, which gives you velocity. You have safer, which is sustainability, and from other angles as well. And happier, of course, which is team morale, and then not just within the team but even outside the team. The good part of this particular model is that it actually does a holistic retrospective with not only team members but also the health of the product, the health of the customers. And Mike Cohn, and of course, sorry, so my list probably goes on, but he's the author of a book called User Stories Applied. And that's where he talks about how to derive the most from your user stories and how you learn from your retrospectives and define your user stories in that particular manner. So that was a great learning because making user stories actionable, or rather, when you decompose a user story and where you're talking about the benefit part of the user story, wherein what you actually get, what is the outcome when you do something, that actually can stem from a past retrospective as well, which was a great finding. A sprint retrospective is often seen as the not so mandatory event within the Scrum, and that is what actually hinders the process. I also believe that the typical start, stop, continue, or what went well, what did not go well, what has to be improved, I think that is the bare minimum a team can do, and it's definitely not sufficient. So that is also something which I kind of wanted to highlight and bring to fore, that it is a job of a facilitator and Scrum Master or anybody, it could be for that particular sprint, it could be even the product owner or anybody who's running the retrospective, to set the stage, collect the data, get some insights, and run that retrospective in the most effective manner. Like for example, Mike Cohn has written in his article, there are 17 different ways, creative, innovative ways on how you can run a retrospective. Right. So this topic is very close to me because, in my opinion, the main challenge is, first challenge is obviously to get people to open up, because they somehow feel that feedback equals insubordination, and that is the mindset we kind of hope to break, especially with flat hierarchy in the teams, no designations. Now everybody has a flat designation as well. So we try and break that barrier, but for some reason that still comes or gets in the way. Maybe because it's experience or some kind of an authority which the number of years of experience gets. But that is also slowly changing, right? In retrospectives, we talk about facts and opinions, of course, and every opinion counts. So every opinion need not be actionable, but we definitely have to cover every person's opinion and hear out everyone in the team. Being able to nudge people when they're not opening up without actually feeding words into their mouth, that is also a skill which a facilitator should gain. Amongst all the retrospective that you may have conducted in the past with different people, you may have worked with so many people, hundreds of people by now. What do you think are the common issues or the common rants that you hear across teams?
So poor estimates is one thing which is heard very often. Teams provide estimate without very clear understanding of what needs to be done in the story, and ultimately land up not adhering to the commitments. Estimation is something which can never be exact. What we can do our best is we can try to be as accurate as possible, and
Correct.
that is only possible when you go back in the history, when you go back in the past, look your estimates, try to evolve, try
Right.
to build on top of that, and that is where retrospective comes to your rescue. So this is very important. Another thing I hear a lot is indirect feedback, wherein people can't blame directly but try to provide a feedback. So every feedback needs to be constructive. There's people needs to enter the room when they are going for retrospective with a very broad mind, broad approach, that this is all for the good of the
for the
team,
larger
for the larger good. So, I mean, one very important point which I understood after conducting various retrospectives is people don't understand the importance of retrospective, and that should be emphasized a lot. We need to convince masses that the benefit it has.
True.
So yeah, and people need to be honest.
Correct.
So that's the most important thing.
Correct. So I think frankness is a trait which has to be developed within the team, being open about it, etc. And what I have observed is yes. So estimations also, even before that, when you take people as to even start questioning, and if you do not have enough clarity. So if people don't have enough clarity on what they need to do, they probably cannot even estimate that very well because they can't break down the work that much. So if you look at it, providing clarity is someone's job within a product team, which has to be done carefully. And I would say that instead of directly pointing to that person, if that person actually self-realizes it himself or herself, that is good for the whole team. Otherwise, yes, it is. You have to do the dirty job and actually point to someone and say, okay, could you please provide clarity next time onwards? Let's make sure that the stories are already outlined well, described well, so they don't spend a lot of time in sprint planning or even during the sprint as they start to work on, right? Second thing which I've seen that we plan too much around dependencies. We call our teams to be cross-functional, but we are mostly waiting on someone's decision to come through. So if our sprints start to become a little bit more forward-looking, these complaints or these common issues can probably go down even more. Coming back to estimates and stuff, we promise too much and deliver too little. So I think we tend to get ahead of ourselves more than often in an attempt to probably prove something to someone, and that's not really needed. As long as we deliver with quality, it's in most of the times, in most cases, is going to work very well. Fundamental deviations from agile principles or team agreements is something which I personally cannot tolerate. So I take it upon myself to coach and mentor my team every now and then to remind them what agile principles are and team agreements. So that is one thing which is lacking in my team now, that after a retrospective or at the end of the sprint, if we have deviated from a team agreement, we don't actually go back and update that single document.
So what I have understood in my experience so far, people aren't honest when it comes to retrospective. One most common complaints about retrospective is that people fail to bring up real problems, real issues. Neither they do admit to their problems. Yeah. If people aren't going to be honest, then retrospective is just a mere waste of time. But there is a solution. We should not abandon retrospectives in that case. Rather than that, we need to focus on getting people to be more honest and open.
Right.
There are some steps which we can take to increase the honesty and trust among the team members, like creating a safe environment. People won't speak unless they feel safe.
Correct.
So that means getting everyone to agree that whatever happens in the meeting, in the retrospective, is for the sake of good, stays only till the retrospective. I mean, definitely we need to churn out the action points out of that, but it's not a blame game.
True.
which we are going to play. So yeah, I mean, and if you want to if you want others to speak, definitely first you should start speaking, and this is where this implies mostly for Scrum Masters. First, they need to come on, pitch in, bring out their points, and then expect others to talk. No one likes to be criticized. A criticism without a suggestion is just a complaint.
Correct.
So encourage team members to provide constructive criticism, and when criticism is constructive, it will definitely make sense.
Right. If an individual has a problem within your team, it actually is a team's problem. So instead of saying that this is something which you did not do, you could always say, or the team could always suggest that this is something which we can do differently. And like you said, right? So suggestion needs to be followed with a rant or a complaint, and then that becomes constructive criticism. Because I absolutely agree with you. No matter anybody shouts at the top of his voice saying, I can take feedback, they cannot take feedback, and that's the fact of the matter. I also feel there is a point when you actually have to let people vent. I've had some retrospectives, like really dramatic retrospectives, where people have just sworn out of the room, shouting, saying, "I can't take this anymore," and that's actually a good retrospective. It's fine, because then you have to go and probably calm that person down, identify, get him back to the room, give him some warm tea, or whatever it takes for him to kind of open up and start talking. and everybody joins that discussion to comfort him. So natural emotions coming out, people, it only shows that they care, and that's what you want. The last thing that you really want is indifference from the team. So because that is just going to kind of cascade a bunch of serious mistakes and some serious wrongdoings within the teams going wrong. So if people are care, they will definitely vent out. And that's probably the first sign as well, that if people are not talking, they probably don't care enough. All right, so just moving on. I mean, so you were talking about getting to people to talk, etc., right? Are there any tips and tricks which you use to get people to engage, just participate as a group?
So, I mean, trust me, retrospectives are boring if you conduct it in the same way every time.
Right.
So there needs to be variation. It's fine to have fixed set of ways wherein you want to run the retrospectives, but you can't do the retrospective the exact same way. You need to keep the team engaged. There are two general ways. It is fine to have standard ways you like to run the retrospectives, but you can't do the retrospective the exact same way every time. The standard is okay, but it should not be repetitive. Every time, if there's no variation, people will not be engaged. It will become monotonous, and people will lose interest. There are two general ways to vary your retrospective. Either change the questions you ask or change how you ask the questions. So changing the question you ask your team members during the retrospective is a great way to freshen up, stale retrospectives. If you have been asking what went well, what didn't, change your questions. Perhaps ask what should be done better, what should we stop doing. I mean, this is a very small change. Or there are a number of other variations. Even better, change the context in which you are asking questions by playing unique games, doing various fun activities for retrospectives. I know it sounds crazy, but it really works. I've seen people start looking forward to these meetings. And more importantly, they follow through the action plan which is created after these retrospectives. Retrospectives should be fun, energetic, engaging, surprising, and people should love to attend it.
Wow, that actually resonates so very well. So I go over the board, especially setting up the stage for the retrospective, right? I mean, I've taken the term so literally sometimes that this one time what happened was Liverpool Football Club. They were playing a game and they won. And so we were just rejoicing that kind of happened just on a Friday when our sprint closed, and we started the retrospective with their anthem. So you will never walk alone. We kind of sang that when you walk through a storm, and it just went on and on. The whole vibration in the team was extremely positive. People who didn't know the song, they actually pulled up lyrics from Google, started singing with the tune. It's a very simple tune, but it was so much fun. That kind of broke the ice for the first 5 to 10 minutes. That's it. And after that, we had a very hearty retrospective and very effective one. I do feel that knowing your people to the core at a very personal level definitely helps, because then you understand their ways of working very well. Especially now when we're doing hybrid and some people are in office and some people are not in office. I've actually not even met some of my team members except on the camera. It's very important to know them very personally. So if something is hurting them, something is bothering them, especially related to work, it is very important to kind of, for the facilitator to have a close ear, close watch on that person and kind of just go and comfort. So doing these checkpoints also now kind of helps. These are also our lessons drawn from our first podcast. Just to make it effective, right? I mean, so when we hear a lot of stuff, like, because you also mentioned that retrospectives do tend to get like a waste of time. So how do you actually make effective, like make it more purposeful?
So I mean, there are various things which should be done. This first needs a proper planning. So I would emphasize on 5 key points which any Scrum Master should or a team as a whole should work on this. So first is set the stage. Take time to consciously set the stage for the retrospective. It is the first and the most vital step, making the meeting effective, enjoyable for all the audiences. Take into consideration that everyone is attending the meeting. They were working on something else. It could have been solving a very critical issue or debugging something on production.
Change of context.
And suddenly, they enter a meeting room with a very different mindset on how coming up with various suggestions, feedbacks, ways to improve. So it requires a proper stage to be set before we start this. Once that is done, the second most important thing is gathering the data. Here the whole teams, the complete team comes together. They find out the points on which further discussion can be done. I've seen a lot of teams doing the gathering data process into a round robin fashion, where one team member gives the points after the other one.
Right.
That's how it happens. So in this case, it directly puts you on the spot, and you need to listen and also think at the same time. So you're not able to absorb how what is happening, what your peers are saying. So in my opinion, best idea is to give everyone some point, a chit or a notebook wherein they can write down what they feel about it, and then we can discuss on it more. So yeah, I mean, after setting the stage, gathering data is another very important point, which I think. Then once we have these points, we need to gather the insights. So there will be multiple hundreds of points may come up if you have a larger team. In my case, I have 90-member team, so we easily get 50-55 points to discuss, to ponder upon. So at this point, the team can get together on the board with their ideas and display and discuss how each of these points relates to each other. There can be a lot of duplicates. When there are a lot of duplicates, that means this is the point where you need to emphasize more, you need to work on more. So these notes or points are grouped into general themes such as story context, interruptions, networking issues which you got, something like that sort of. So yeah, then the team member should be given opportunity to vote. So if you have 10 story points after your ideation or after you generate all the insights, everyone gets two votes to upvote basically.
Correct.
And then you land up with some smaller number of data points to actually work on. So after this, you ultimately get I'm talking about the fourth point, which is decide what to do. So after you upvote your the findings after gathering data and all, you are left with few of the points. Then you create proper action points, which needs to be tracked until closure. And the last and the very most important activity, again, after setting the stage and doing all of this, is closing the retrospectives properly.
Correct.
Because now, again, the team needs to go back into their environment.
Yes, where they came from. Yeah.
So again, closing the meeting psychologically is very important here. So yeah, these are my five main activities which we should.
Wow, that was so brilliant. So I just wanted to add there a couple of lessons which I kind of learned, right? So maintaining chain of retrospectives is something which I found extremely beneficial. That gives tremendous advantage because let's say that same issue has been recurring for a longer amount of time. It becomes very obvious when you maintain a chain of retrospectives. Or for that matter, let's say you have resolved and overcome a challenge as a team, and then it kind of surfaces again after a couple of months. Then you already know, hey, this was something which we have seen. There's a deja vu of sorts. You go back in time and see, okay, this is what we did to kind of solve the issue. Let's try that all over again. So maintaining the chain of retrospectives and referring to at least N-1 or N-2 retrospectives while you're doing this one definitely helps, in my opinion. So you also know how far you have come and how greatly you're performing as a team. And it's not just about burn down, right? I mean, everybody looks at the burn down to start with on a retrospective, and that's actually a scary data point to begin with. But okay, all said and done, yes, delivery is our accountability, so that's where we should be focusing on anyway to begin with. But okay, apart from that, I also feel just focusing on action planning. So if there are any decisions made as a team collectively, they need to be carried forward to the sprint planning. We carry only very quantitative kind of data and leave out the subjective or qualitative data behind from a retrospective because there is no measure or there's no way to follow up. So it does not follow through to the next sprint planning, which is just 2 days away. So you are doing this on a Friday, your next Monday is going to be sprint planning. All you have to do is just refer back to your retrospective notes, the closing notes maybe, or archiving your discussions. Just open that up, remind the team once that this is what we spoke about, is like a flashback. Let them know where they are and how you start the new sprint again. That, in my opinion, that has worked very well in my experience as well. We are towards the tail end of our podcast as well, and now we are talking about closing retrospectives. So you already spoke about how important it is to psychologically close the retrospective, because people have to change the context back and go to the real deal. Because this was like a small fun exercise that we had. We tried to make it fun, as much as fun as possible, because we want people to kind of have a good camaraderie within the team as well, right? But specifically about closing retrospective, is there anything you would like to add?
Discussed, psychologically closing the sprint is the most important thing. Definitely, the points which we gather after the retrospective, they need to be archived properly. As you said, they need to be translated into action items which can be planned in the future sprints to be worked upon. So archiving the points are some, is another very important thing.
About celebrating outcomes, right? Or these small successes and small wins. I really truly believe in that. And I don't mind spending a few bucks to get a few sweets or goodies for my team. And that kind of really helps. That is also a great opportunity to give somebody extra sweets just because they did well. And then kind of you're almost doing like these soft rewards and recognition running within the team. I think that was a great discussion, Paritosh. Any closing notes for this retrospective of retrospectives that we did?
Don't give up.
Yes.
Practice as much as possible. This is a combined effort, which Scrum Masters, POs, team together need to build.
Absolutely.
Practice. And definitely, there will be results.
Yeah.
There will be positive results.
Dude, don't give up and just keep doing it. Keep at it. It can give you great results. Absolutely agree on that. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Paritosh. Thank you for listening to us. Bye-bye.